You are now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Have you ever dealt with a so-called chronic medical illness and have seen multiple clinicians who have suggested that they can't quite figure out what's wrong with you? Maybe the problem is that the key to finding the root cause of why you're ill is to ask the question, why, times. Being a doctor can be quite challenging, especially when you consider we are asked to solve what at times are very complex medical conditions in about 15 minutes, a very short office visits. But even with this being our reality, not settling and asking why may be the missing link to helping you discover what's been ailing you all along. You know, as we think about the importance of asking why, let's think of an example you may be familiar with. Many years ago, America had a huge problem at the Jefferson Memorial. Put simply, birds were pooing all over the memorial, causing an unsightly scene for visitors. The rangers attempted to clean the site, but harsh chemicals began to damage the memorial. Until one day, a new ranger took the helm and started to investigate by asking the why question, and here is what he found. The birds were attracted to the Jefferson Memorial because of the vast number of spiders, a delicious treat for birds. The spiders were attracted to the memorial because of the vast number of midges, and these are like a type of fly that were nesting there. And as the flies were attracted to the memorial because of the light, the flies turned out like to mate in places where the light sets the mood. And because the lights were turned on at the Jefferson Memorial 1 hour before dark, it created the kind of mood they needed. So in short, the flies were attracted to the light, the spiders were attracted to the flies, and the birds were attracted to the spiders. So how did this situation actually resolve? Very simply, after constantly reviewing the site for several months, the manager made the decision to turn the light on an hour later. That 1 hour delay was enough to ruin the mood lighting for the flies, who then decided to have their romantic time somewhere else. No flies, no spiders, no spiders, no birds, no birds, no poo, no need to clean the Jefferson Memorial so often. Case closed. So when you think about this example and you think about your health related conditions, maybe asking why enough times is what you're going to need to do in order to get to the root cause of your medical condition. Now, thankfully, today's guest may have one resource that you can use as you attempt to discover why you have not discovered the real reason for having the illness that you're suffering from. And today's guest is Reed Davis. Reed is a board-certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutrition therapist and an expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He's the founder of the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and FDN certification course, and over 4,000 graduates have participated and attended in 50 countries. Reed serves as the health director at a wellness center in Southern California, and for over 10 years he's done that. He's had over 10,000 clients, and he is an expert in his field. He's also on the advisory board of the American Natural Wellness Coaches Board and the American Association of Natural Wellness Coaches. And with that, my friend, I thank you for taking time on your busy day, my busy day, for us to have a chat about lab testing and other wellness topics. Thanks for being here today, Reed.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Dr. Tony. I'm glad I got the memo on the blue shirt.
That's right. You better know it. This is my favorite color. Even my car is blue, the same color as you can see my background. So I used to like green, and for some reason it shifted. Maybe I was looking at the sky one day, but yeah, the blue works for me. It works for you, and let's have us a great conversation. And it's funny you say that because I didn't even notice until you said it.
Fantastic.
So let's start. Let me get a sip. Now, prior to um, your focus on helping people understanding the root cause of why they get sick, you were doing some, other work, environmental work. And I want to talk a little bit about what that work looked like and contrast it to what you're doing today.
Fantastic. Thanks. Yeah, I was saving the whole planet at one time in my life. Air, birds, water, trees, bees. I graduated from a environmental and business law program at the University of San Diego, and it would just change my whole life around. And I'd always been a do-gooder, but you really
Mhm.
feel like you're doing some good in the world when you're helping the environment. And there's a lot of work to be done there, believe me, as you know. And then around the turn of the century, so almost 25 years ago, I started worrying more about people than about the planet or the things. So I didn't have any health problems, but I was really seriously considering how bad things were and what that does to people, including me. I didn't want something sneaking up on me. Like I thought, well, I like being healthy, happy and stuff. And it was a great world to be in. But I switched jobs. I just simply just changed careers midstream. I went to work for a wellness center. It was where my son was a high school athlete, and his chiropractor actually owned the place. And I just started working with people. I started running that business, but I immediately fell in with the right folks and started training in the lab work and nutrition. And I got all these certificates and things. And the beauty of working there, Dr. Tony, was that they let me work on the patients in between my classes. And
Mm.
I got good at it. I really loved it. I fell in love with the clinical side, with working with people one on one and in couples and some groups and things too. But mostly just everyone coming in the office was sick and tired of being sick and tired. They went
Mm.
through they were what I called it the cycle of trial and error. So they were caught, and they've been going from one practitioner to the next, getting very frustrated, seeking something alternative to standard medicine, which hadn't worked for them. Now, there's nothing wrong with standard medicine, don't get me wrong, because it does a really amazing job with standard medicine issues. The
Mhm.
problem is these people had chronic, downward spiraling lifestyle and holistic related problems that just doctors aren't trained in. So they
That's right.
really, they had their ladder up against the wrong wall. That's what I'd say. So again, this is nothing against they were just looking in the wrong system in the wrong place
That's
for
right.
their answers. And there were very few places to look back then 25 years ago. So I started studying really hard, and I worked for 10 years. This is the basic story. I worked for 10 years. I ran thousands of functional lab testing on thousands of people, and I fortunately recognized some patterns. Again, this was in a clinical setting, working with, Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith, really, who were just frustrated and um, had reached a lot of dead ends already. And I didn't want to be the next guy in line. In other words, I wanted to be the last person they needed to see. And without medical training, it was hard. But the good news is I had nothing to unlearn. A lot to learn, but nothing to unlearn, I like to say. And so I was on an open quest and just researching. I ran thousands of labs. I had great mentors too, by the way, not just
Mhm.
what I figured out on my own. Like I had really good mentorship.
Mm.
Matter of fact, I kind of think, Tony, that I was like an alter ego for some of these doctors who wanted to do what I was doing,
Mhm. Yeah.
but they were kind of trapped in their licensure and their standard of care, and they couldn't break loose. They didn't know how. They're tied to the insurance model and things. So I was the free guy that could do anything and run all these labs, long as people were willing to pay for it out of their pocket.
That's right.
And so I feel like at that time, again, year 2000, 1999 actually, and on, running all those labs, we were on the cutting edge of functional medicine. That wasn't a phrase we used back then. It was just
Mm.
alternative. And a lot of people looked at alternative as kind of like quackery, like, like, what are you guys doing over there? So
Hey,
it was
I
fun,
think
and I discovered some things, and I helped a lot of people.
I'm happy you did. I that language of being trapped resonates with me because we have to have approval, whatever we consider standard of care, before we can do anything. And so if you start to deviate from that, there's a problem. So I live in this low carb space, and an example of that is the DASH diet. Recently, there was a recent study talking about the DASH versus low carb. And when they did the randomized controlled trial, they did find that the low carb for patients with diabetes, weight loss, and blood pressure was twice as effective with low carb versus DASH. Now, and I'm bringing it up for a point. The point is, until they get that like notice in the mail that that's okay, they'd say, I can't do low carb, I got to do DASH. And it's like it puts you in this narrow focus that doesn't allow you to think outside the box. And you're right. I had no clue that they weren't using that language because I had just gotten my master's in the last year. But yeah, I don't want to be trapped, and I want doctors to be able to think. And it actually speaks to another thought I had, which is this ideal of, distinguishing between conventional medicine versus how you like to think about medicine. How do you feel about that concept?
Well, you mean traditional, as in standard American versus the alternative and stuff? Well,
Yeah.
it has its place. Everything has its place, you know. If you all of a sudden can't breathe and your chest is on fire and your head's swelled up and you caught something,
Hmm.
almost no amount of supplements is going to fix it, like going to a doctor and having them write your prescription for something really strong.
Right.
It's going to knock it out. I mean, you're going to feel so much better when you do that. So when
Yeah.
it comes to relief care, urgent care, or what I call emergent care, like, hey, something just emerged and it's kicking my butt. Well, that's a great place to go get checked out by a conventional medicine because they've got some stuff that's strong that will help you. I mean, relieve symptoms, get you back to breathing. That's pretty important. I think 5 minutes is about the limit. You know, and then now once you're out of the woods and you want to start working on your immune system and reducing your risk and not get sick again, well, that's the place for the natural kind of alternative stuff.
Hmm.
It's very, very good at the anti-aging, longevity. See, drugs won't make you live much longer. They may keep you out of pain as you get old, but if you really want to live longer, healthier, happier, it's the natural side of things that's going to get you there. Um, in my world, and so that's a major distinction right there. Relief care, there's nothing like certain things a doctor could do for you, a medical
Hmm.
doctor who understands disease. By the way, excuse me, when that downward spiral is really contracted, you better get your butt to a doctor.
That's right. You
you
better.
know so but if there's time to capitalize on the observations that we might make, well, then you do that. So
That's
if
right.
there's no time, go get your butt in, you go get the life jacket on,
Hmm.
and get out of the woods, whatever expression you want to use. But when there is time, well, then there's observations that can be made that could just start pointing you in the right direction in terms of the lifestyle and holistic remedies that are out there. So the
Yeah.
both are really important. I think that's why we call it complementary. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what it went from alternative to complementary. Oh, they both work. Then it went to integrative, where
Hmm.
kind of like they work good together. Now
Hmm.
there's functional medicine, but you know as well as anyone that if you're still tied to the insurance model, you're fixing snotty noses and writing prescriptions, and it's not all fun and games of longevity and anti-aging. You have to, as a standard of care licensure, you've got to write that prescription. You've got to, and it's, thank God there's someone there to do it. But functional medicine has not fully evolved in my view.
Yeah, this reminds me of something I heard you speak of before, and you kind of described it as what you call the sounds like method. So talk a little bit about what that is and why I thought about it when I thought about functional medicine.
It's funny because it's not a bad thing, but the sounds like method is picking your labs you might run based on what it sounds like. And
Right.
there are traditionally reliable clusters of symptoms that sounds like arthritis, or it sounds like thyroid. So if it sounds like thyroid, there's about 8, maybe even 10 very common symptoms. Oh, it sounds like thyroid. So what you
Hmm.
do is you run a thyroid test, and
Right.
you'll probably find hypothyroidism. But God forbid you pat yourself on the back real hard, because that's not all that's going on with that person. You may have found out why they're tired and fatigued and overweight, can't lose it, hair thinning, cold or numb extremities, constipation, feeling sad and blue. You might have actually, even by using that sounds like and running a test, diagnosing and treating that hypothyroidism, they might
Hmm.
actually feel a little bit better. But
Hmm.
look at all the thing they're now ignoring.
Right.
See, yeah, they're not getting into the rest of the hormones and the immune system and digestion and detox, all these really important functional aspects. And so sometimes the diagnosis and treatment is actually a distraction from what's really wrong.
That sounds Now I went to University of Western States for my functional medicine, and one of the things I found intriguing is you would come up with like a way to think about, okay, um, the person in front of me has a problem. I've kind of figured some things out. Maybe it was what you just said, this example of the thyroid. But then functional medicine focuses on healing the whole person, right? So I think it's important that we kind of pause and maybe share some thoughts about, even if you hit the lottery and you figure out what's wrong with a person, at least on the surface, why is it so important to heal the whole person as well?
Well, we're not just our parts, or even one part added to another. We are a whole people. I mean, we're body, mind, spirit. I believe that you have to take care of it all, or wherever you're weakest is going to manifest. That's where you're going to have the most problems, or have unresolved problems. So a lot of what we do, we just call it, Tony, identifying healing opportunities. And the more
Mhm.
healing opportunities we can uncover and resolve, or and sometimes that takes a lot of creativity. The more healing opportunities we can uncover and help resolve, move towards resolution, towards rebalancing, repair, rebuilding, whatever it might be, that will increase a person's resiliency. And that's what health is: balance and resiliency. But sometimes in that search for those healing opportunities, we find that the obstacle is in their head,
Mhm.
or it's not necessarily that there's some known stressor that has caused this, which caused this, which caused this. It's the way they think, or even lack of purpose in life, and we call it existential angst. Like, if you don't
Mhm.
know why you're here, that could be, believe it or not, the source of all your problems. It's just a major stressor, and it makes you make bad decisions. And you're off chasing this and chasing that, doing unhealthy things, or and then you're not paying attention. You have accidents, or it's really amazing how much these stressors can build up over time.
Mhm.
So if you leave a stone unturned, that's the one you needed to look under in so many cases.
So, a conventionally trained doctor like myself who gets additional training in functional medicine but still lives in a conventional model. And I know things I didn't know. I know tests that I can order that I had not heard of until I got the training. But getting access to that information and the test is very challenging. And part of it is cost, right? So my question to you, particularly when people are struggling and they've been told by their clinician, I don't really know what's wrong with you, everything's negative, and they haven't even touched on all the types of tests that you learn in this whole functional medicine space. So talk a little bit about what you are now doing to help people uncover what tests they should be getting. And let's start there, because I think that's so important. When people struggle, they got to know, what do I do now?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head when it comes to one of your primary objections. It's going to be the cost, because people have been trained that their insurance is healthcare,
Right.
and whatever's covered is what you get. And if it isn't good enough, oh well, what do you do
Right.
now? Well, what you have to get people to realize, it's a major paradigm shift, is who's responsible for their health. And if it isn't that person, if you're out there and you think um, this doctor or that practitioner and some guru and things, if you think they're in control of your health, you got another thing coming, because you are in control of your health. That's the
That's right.
first place we start with people is, all right, who's going to be in control of your health? Your insurance company? You're going to leave it to them, to whose goal is to really, I mean, they make money. They're there to
That's
make
right.
profit for their shareholders and
Right.
to provide a service. I'm not totally dismissing the service. Thank God for insurance. Catastrophic things, you're covered. You need it. I'm an old guy. I have to have mine, right? Never know what's going to happen. But the idea is that I'm still in control of my own health. That means from the time I get up in the morning, the way I set my mind, positive and always trying to have a good day. It's going to be a good day. I mean, the way I think is healthy, and then the things I do, what I put in my mouth, all the way down to what time I put my head down on the pillow, and get up, and then what happens in between. You eat right. You There's other forms of rest, by the way. If I need a rest in the day, I take it. I don't burn myself out.
Mhm.
I always move my body and exercise almost every day. Maybe not as much as I should anymore, but you get the point. Diet, rest, exercise. Since you love your acronyms, I'll give you ours. For the solution is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. Now that's easy to remember because it spells dress, D.R.E.S.
Right. Like that.
Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplements. Each one could be a whole show in itself, obviously.
Mhm.
But the secrets are to, number one, be in control, realize who's in control. So that's the first thing, is a mindset. And what does that mean? You're going to pay out of pocket for what you really want. You save your money. Don't waste it on this stuff that generally contributes to the chaos. It doesn't help you
Mhm.
resolve chaos. I call it metabolic chaos. You know that. So what's contributing to metabolic chaos, if you just stop that, spending that money, you'd have the money for sorting out metabolic chaos, the
Mhm.
results of and contributors to. Because we spend a ton of money on a bunch of crap and a lot of
Mhm.
time too. And those are all very valuable resources that could go towards a healthier lifestyle. And maybe putting out of your pocket for some laboratory work, or supplements and gym memberships and other counseling you might need, or support costs. And there's
Mhm.
wonderful people all around us that are, their whole life is dedicated to others. Their
Mhm.
entire lives are dedicated to helping other people, and it's really remarkable.
That's cool. When I think about the education, the problem with school is that it's so like, you got to pass the test, you got to do the paper, and then you feel like you're just trying to reach those targets. And I'll give University of Western States credit. To the extent they could, they tried to be as practical as possible. They tried to say real life situations. If you're starting your own practice, I was already doing my thing, but for those people who are new, they provided a path. And as a clinician, what I try to do to be safe and to, to a certain extent, follow some type of guidance. I like algorithms. I like structure because I don't have to be as smart. I can like, oh, a person has this. You need to think about these things. So that helps me. So I don't have to be like always thinking about everything. So I guess, so from your perspective, even as a doc who's new to functional medicine, new to the labs that are in that space, in what way can you support a clinician like myself or a person who is not a clinician but is very curious about what's going on with their body? What does your platform offer so people can kind of grow in that area and be prepared?
Yeah, well, since 2008, I've been teaching the lab work that is highly educational. Like if you want data on how a person's actually doing, you got to run the right labs. You need the
Yeah.
data. So you can listen. We're good listeners too. We listen to the history of the complaints and how
Hmm.
long they've been going on and how often it comes up and what are the, why is that bad and do you really want to get rid of it? Lots of good active listening and there's some positive psychology and active listening things there. But then we run the labs, and it's not just your standard CBC chem panels with differentials, whatever you're doing, because way too much of the time, people are coming to us with that in hand. Hey, my doctor ran this lab. He said there's nothing wrong with me,
Hmm.
but I know something is wrong with me. I know there's
Right.
something wrong. And so I don't think I'm crazy. I don't want to just take a chill pill. And so I really want to know what's wrong. Aha, you're going to have to probably pay out of pocket for some of those labs. And so I would offer the saliva testing, the urine testing, dried urine, stool testing. We even look at hair. Not that I have very much, but it's because it contains minerals and it contains heavy metals and things that are in your body that are excreting.
Right.
So you've got a record in the history there. So hair, blood, saliva, urine, stool, and things. We're always looking a little deeper, a little
Hmm.
farther upstream, and I'll say that gets us a lot of important data, like really good, usable, critical data, which belongs to who? The person.
In
That
person.
data doesn't belong to your physician. You should be getting copies of everything for second opinion or even for non-medical opinion. See,
Hmm.
that's the world. The world hasn't even got that far yet. Well, there's opinions that are medically based, and that's important. You better get one. And then there's like, and a lot of times that'll be like, well, nothing's wrong with you. Well, I
Hmm.
want a different opinion. I want someone to look at
Right.
that test or run some other tests that tell me where are the imbalances and the dysfunctions, and those can be way upstream, far away
Hmm.
from where the symptoms are occurring, or they might not even be measurable. And that's
Mm.
the little bit frustrating part. But sometimes we might not know what the root cause is, but we can get close enough to it to have an effect on it with the
Hmm.
diet and the rest and the exercise and stress reduction and supplementation. I don't have my own brand yet, but I know a lot about them, and they're all these come into play to put that person in control, and they need the data and they need a good interpretation of it. So that's
Okay.
one thing I offer is the
It's
training. Yeah, the training is
the training. So that's like a class to train people how to take, no matter where they sit, whether they have a master's in nutrition or if they're just wanting to understand how to go into a different space, a more root cause of why you're ill space, and it'll help them understand how to then proceed. So the class provides the framework and the foundation for that.
yeah, absolutely. It's a certification course, and most physicians often take my course. They don't care about the certification because they've got
Right,
parchment hanging on their wall.
right, 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 right.
But I do offer for health coaches and trainers and professional do-gooders. Most people have a college degree. They got a certificate or two or three, or I have 15 Certificates don't mean a whole lot, but
Mhm.
they've got, again, a college degree in something. They've got some certificates in something health related, and then they have work experience. And now they want to kick it up a notch and really get into the science and the
That's
data,
right.
and then all the practical. You said something really important, Doc. The practical application that they tried at Western States is we're just full of that. It's all practical, usable, in your face. Stuff because it's based on my 10 years as a patient educator. I had to look
Mhm.
Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones in the face, and tell them what was really wrong because I couldn't
Right.
diagnose. Not a physician. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose anything, and didn't realize. Well, you don't want to read. You want to learn what's really wrong if you can. So we've
Mm.
spent the last quarter century trying to sort that out.
Cool. So so we know that it'll be important to figure out what's wrong with us, but then there are many ways that we can heal. And one of the things that I learned, even if you think about, um, like I have a NESS acronym, but I also have a rope, and the rope has relationships. And by the way, my nest and rope acronym is really the roots of the functional medicine tree, and I just took those different thoughts and put it into one place. But the O in the rope and the P is avoiding organisms that harm us, but the pollutants is really those toxins, right? So when you think about you know toxins. Like I think about food sensitivity, food things that bother us, and we're sensitive to them. You know, why is it so important for us to be thoughtful about avoiding things that are toxic, like things that we're sensitive to, like foods, and how that can impact our health negatively?
Well, it's a great question, and we actually have these detoxification systems in our body. The liver being the first one people think about. It's like a filter. You eat food, and it gets assimilated into your body, and something's got to sort out the good from the bad because there's bad in almost everything, um, and that can include um, herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, rodenticides. It could also include bacteria, fungus, virus, parasites, and things like that. So there's lots of things that need sort of filtering out, and the
Mhm.
liver does a good job. But the liver passes things on into the bloodstream. What doesn't get recirculated through bile into the small intestine, hopefully it gets excreted, but it'll go into the bloodstream. Well, then you've got your lymph, you've got your kidneys, you got your lungs, you got even the colon itself is a detox organ. So we've got these detox organs that are all. Why are they there? Well, because we know that there's things we don't want staying in our bodies. Again, this is why sometimes we run a hair, we call it an HTMA, or hair tissue Miller analysis. Wow, look at all this mercury and zinc and
Mhm.
cadmium, and especially if you smoke or live in a city. And so we find stuff that should get detoxified or just excreted. And the liver can only do so much. There's
Mhm.
poison. I mean, we're breathing and drinking and all these getting on our skin and stuff. And it's amazing how that works. And I've experienced it. And I mean, not only with thousands of cases, but even personally, I live out in the country and drink well
Mhm.
water. So
Mm.
I don't actually drink it very much. That was going to be my whole point. So I actually drink bottled water, but I take showers in this stuff.
Mhm.
And I found that the minerals we tested the well and found out there's certain minerals in it that are very high. And then I did my hair and found out those minerals are high in my hair. They're high in my well and they're
Mm.
high in my hair. Why? Because I take showers and it's getting absorbed through
Mhm.
my skin. So you
Wow.
can't avoid. You can eat organic all you want, which I do as much as possible. Avoid herbicides and pesticides, but man, there's stuff. So you got to keep your organs really clean and able to do their job. And some have better livers than others. And then there's stuff you do to that liver that's unnecessary. might be fun,
Right.
might be fun, but you're putting a lot of stress on that poor
Yeah.
organ by too much alcohol or caffeine or
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
You get the point.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting in that there are so many, like, things that we can do to be healthy, and I think most people think is what I add to my body. I need to eat a certain way, I need to exercise, but the toxin avoidance is so important, not just so you won't, overtax your liver, but also it's important to think about, well, the liver, you want it to function optimally, and what are these detoxification pathways needing to function optimally so that when you're exposed to, inevitably, you got to take a shower. We're not going to have bottled water showers probably. So we need to be aware that we're going to be exposed no matter what. And I tell patients, don't get paranoid, because sometimes when you learn these things, you get paranoid. You're like, oh my God, I'm just toxic. And I had, a previous guest who wrote the book Dirty Girl,
Ah,
and then her, yeah, you familiar with that book?
yeah. I can't remember,
Yeah,
but yeah, good one.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, but you don't want to get paranoid, because when I talked about the book to a patient before, she was like, "Man, I'm just so nervous now," because she started to learn all the things that she needed to do. It could be the air, it could be the filter for the house, none of which she could do immediately because of the nature of her finances. So we had to slow her down a little bit and say, you know what, you can start to make progress, but we got to take, baby steps first. And let's focus on the more obvious things that, I think for her, I think we talked about the plastic covering the so-called paper plates, the lining, and we said, well, let's start using our plates that are not paper/plastic. Let's start there, and let's start doing some. And plus, you'll probably save money because you don't need to be buying that stuff anyway. So we start making these little changes, and you get this tremendous benefit. So I just want people who check this episode out to, don't get overwhelmed, because even if you are blessed to be able to start to look at labs that may guide you towards healing, you still want to, there may be a list of things that would benefit what you find, but you don't have to do everything in one week or one month. You can actually ease into this. One thing we talked about before we started was sleep, and you said that you get as much sleep as you can. I think we all are, aware how helpful it is, but talk a little bit about why you think sleep is so important to keep us healthy.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing what happens when you go to sleep. We all know what a good night's sleep feels like. It
Mm,
almost doesn't need much explanation. It's like, I feel so rested. Last night was a great night's sleep. Your body feels better. Your brain's working better. You've done some detoxification. You've processed some deep thoughts, and just all of this really beneficial stuff happens when we slow our bodies down and our liver gets a chance to flush out and work better. Our brains, there's such a thing as the brain actually shrinks a bit and lets cerebral spinal fluid flow through it better, so you're cleaning out your brain. Not only that, but the thoughts themselves, you sleep on it, it's not so bad the next day. It's, well, I lived through the night, I'll live with whatever. So all that happens when you go into non-REM sleep. And
mm-hmm,
there's three basic levels, some say four, but when you're, it's not that dreaming sleep where your eyes are fluttering, the rapid eye movements. It's the deep sleep, which, by the way, you'll probably go into easier and for longer. The longer the better. If you go to bed early. So there's been sleep studies done that being in bed and asleep by 10, man, that time between 10 and 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 when you might wake up
mm-hmm,
is so beneficial.
mm-hmm.
Even if you wake up, if you can get back to sleep and get another couple hours in, go through one more deep sleep cycle, man, are you much more likely to be healthy. So it's really important. But going back for just a sec to because they're connected, sleep and detox It happens better. The Chinese call, like, I think it's 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the morning, liver time. The
Mm.
liver's your main detoxifying organ, if you want. The skin is also one, by the way. But it just gets a chance to really go after it and detoxify certain things. And your liver actually separates molecules, and then it puts them back together in a way that the bad parts are detoxified. They're sequestered and attached, and then they can go out into the gallbladder and be excreted later in through the digestive system. And there's something you see what I have right here on my desk, glutathione, for instance.
Mhm.
That's an
Yep.
aid for detoxification. It helps your liver uh,
Yep.
with certain ongoing processes. So you need that. It happens better when you're sleeping. So that's two birds with one stone right there. Just make sure your nutrition is good. I can't leave without saying for
Mm.
your listeners, environmentalworkinggroup.org or
Mhm. Yes.
ewg.org. You can eliminate so many toxins and poisons really just by what you eat and what you have around your household. So the foods to eat, they call it the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. So there's the 12
Mm.
worst foods, and then there's the 15 best foods. They change every year, by the way, so you want to stay up to date. But also household cleaning products and then
Mhm.
personal care products. If you're buying cheap stuff and putting it on your skin, I understand saving a buck here and there, but you may actually be doing more harm than you even dreamed about by putting cheap cosmetics and lotions on your skin and stuff. They're full of things that could harm you, actually, including sunscreen of all the
That's
possible
right.
toxins. So anyway, ewg.org is really a good website. It's all free, and you can download stuff, and it's a neat place to go look for what's things that are ailing you, things that are contributing to that metabolic chaos.
That's right. Well, I know it's a great website because when Wendy Trubo, who wrote the book Dirty Girl, when I interviewed her, she mentioned the website as well.
Yeah,
So I think and it's nice to know these resources are easily accessible, and it's just a matter of taking time to take a look. And it's really, we're so busy with you can call it the toxicity of being busy, that we need to pause sometime, and the bang for the buck that people will get when they start to just get the knowledge about, oh, I didn't realize that this was something that could be harmful. And then you say, well, since I now know this, how do I mitigate that risk by removing that, or at least somehow balancing that out? So I think that's really important. I always appreciate resources. I think that's really critical. Now, our body and our brain are, dealing with stress every single day. Your your interpretation of how the world, or how we should look at the body versus the brain in terms of stress, is there a way to look at it that's different? Is it the same? How would you talk about that topic?
the topic of stress is so huge. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's really distress. I mean, there's actually a good kind of stress. It's worth acknowledging that we call it use stress.
Mm-hmm.
So in my classes, I have this picture. At the time, he was about 30, my son, and he just jumped out of an airplane, and he's free falling. He's got a parachute on, so don't worry. But he's free falling, and his instructor took a picture of him right in that, and he's so high up, you can see the curvature of the earth behind him. And I mean, it's really high up there. By the way, I was the next guy out of the plane. But this picture, I use it as an example, and I say to my students, is this a picture of eustress or distress?
Mm-hmm.
And all the guys go, eustress, like that's having fun. That's the kind of stress you want to put yourself through because it's exciting. You got your blood flowing. It's all positive, and you're out there having a good time in nature and all sort of stuff. And I say, yeah, right. But when you show it to his mom, That's distress. She's, oh my
Mhm.
God, he's falling out of an airplane. So but the idea of eustress and distress is pretty critical, and the world is just so full of distress signals. It's
Mhm.
signaling from outside, uh, and by the way, it could kind of come from your own mind too, which is the tricky part. But the idea of signals from the environment, the world you live in, whether it's the people, relationships, or products, like again, you're putting stuff on your skin or stuff that's on the food that's going down. And oh my goodness, again, a whole show on each one of these things.
Right.
So distress or stress is anything that contributes to metabolic chaos, and
Mm.
it can have a, a deleterious, a negative effect if it's allowed to accumulate. And that's the problem, is we let things build up. We don't handle stress very well. For one thing, I'm an older guy, older generation, and we just were told suck it up.
Mhm.
Like it didn't matter. You just suck it up. You're a grunt. You get the job
Mhm.
done. That's it, and you don't complain about it much.
Mm.
And and if you do, it's probably not till you've had about 6 beers, and then you might whine a little bit. But so we were taught not to get stressed out. That like suck it up, and all these different, even owies. Like I've had motorcycle accidents, I've had skiing injuries, football injuries, um, surfing injuries. You name it. A lot of motorcycle accidents and things like. And you laugh it off. You don't worry, you'll get over it. That's not a good attitude. That's not conducive to. That's we end up like me being old and sometimes grumpy,
Mm.
because you're not dealing with your stressors in a healthy way. You've got to get rid of your stressors. If they're allowed
Mm.
to accumulate, if you don't quickly resolve stressors, then they will cascade throughout the body.
Mhm. Yep.
It's something that started as just a little high blood pressure can end up being major cardiovascular disease and disrupt, not to mention kidney disease, there's renal hypertension and, hepatic hypertension. And there's, oh man, it just cascades until one
Yeah.
day, same thing with blood sugar. Now they're telling us measure uric acid because it's the earliest warning sign for blood sugar problems and it's an independent risk factor. So there's all this stuff that I've learned to test and measure for that can help you eliminate or deal with that stressor. So it's a big, big, big topic. And,
Yeah.
other
Isn't
than those generalities, we have to get into what type of stress, and there's certain techniques for all of them.
Yeah, and I love again, I think that's why it's important to be a chronic. That's a good thing, to be a chronic learner, right? You don't wanna have chronic stress, but you can tolerate acute stress because that's life, but chronic is bad, and if you constantly are learning, then you'll discover maybe areas in your life that's creating stress, and it could be something as simple as at work, you have a supervisor or a manager that you report to, and it's creating a toxic environment for you because of how they don't treat you in a way that's beneficial. Or you may be in a relationship, and the relationship is a little toxic because you guys haven't learned how to, you know, honor and respect each other. And so there's a lot of yelling and screaming, and so you go home where you should be in a very safe space, and it becomes a toxic environment. And I just think that as people are learning how to heal, they have to keep learning so that they can create awareness in areas that they may have not even thought about. Even, is the route you're taking to get home toxic? Think just all these nuances. So I really appreciate that. It also makes me think about the term bio individuality, because there's so many ways to heal. And I'm curious, from your perspective, as you think about the labs that you're training people to measure and interpret, how much individuality is there? We know that, like, um, certain things are good for the mitochondria, for example, to help the mitochondria to be healthy. are those things universally helpful, or do you find that individuals may have to take slightly different paths based on their individual makeup? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, the latter, of course, and again, Tony, you hit on one of the key concepts. It's remarkable how individual we are. And there's no two humans alike. There's no two snowflakes alike. There's no two fingerprints alike.
Yeah.
And the amount of variety you see in let's say fingerprints, we know they're all different. They're so different that we can identify anyone from a previous fingerprint, and they cannot be mistaken for someone else. The same thing is true of, let's just take stomachs. You think stomachs are all like they're drawn in the book, or livers are all like exact?
Right.
No, if you took 100 livers and lined them up end to end, each one would have slightly different characteristics in the way they look, and then functionally it's times 100. Because
Hmm.
there's different pathways in there, the Kupffer cells and the all the different parts of a liver. So individuality is astronomical. As much
Hmm.
as we all put food in and it comes out the other end, yeah, we get that. But man, we are so individually different, which is why the lab testing is so critical. And the idea of there being reference ranges that are right for everyone is a sort of a it's a non-starter with us. Where should mine be? Not in
Right.
between here and here, but where should it be between here and here? Give me my particular narrow range.
Hmm.
And that's something that standard medicine hasn't sorted out yet. It just can't, because of the nature of the animal. It's dealing with the population. Well, so
Cool.
population wise, you need to be between here and where. Oh, individually, oh, you should be running high. Your individual metabolism and makeup and structure and everything, you could stand to be a little bit higher than the next person who's much happier. That's why we don't like taking things just to modify the test results. That's treating the paper from our perspective, and we you try your best to do with the individual, to have them find out through, I don't like this word, but through sort of optimizing each part of their lifestyle, what their happy place is on the paper. So the way I could summarize it maybe is that whatever shows up in the paper isn't the problem,
Hmm.
it's the result of the problem. Like if you have
Yeah.
hot flashes and night sweats, if you have hot flashes and night sweats, is that the problem? No, that's the result of the problem, which is an
That's right.
imbalance. It's the luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormones that are creating vasodilation. Well, what threw those off? Stress. You can kind of always go back to the big red button. Where's the stressor that's throwing everything off? Some stressor somewhere.
Well, what I want to do, I'm taking a look at your website, and I think just really quickly we should probably just summarize what it's offering. When I look at the programs, I see you have your certification course, and we touched on that a little bit. So, could you give me a sense of um, who should be looking at the certification course? We have some coaching mastery. You have some workshops. I just want to give a high level view of, if someone goes to your functional diagnostic nutrition site, what resources they can expect to get, and maybe who should be looking for those resources.
Sure. I mean, I rarely look at that website. That's kind of a marketing person stuff. We have people, but we're my object in life now is to teach you some kind of practitioner, and we have them from licensed to non-licensed. Again, with the college degrees and certificates, and they could be a health coach. We've even had some people who just wanted to work on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by
Yeah,
the way, if you did that successfully, it'd be worth the price of admission, because
that's right.
it's a very low entry barrier. It's not an expensive course at all for the amount of education that we give. So it's
Mhm.
health coach certification and education to grow your impact. And I would bet you, a dollar to a donut that your impact will increase. Your ability to help others will be improved by taking the course, because we're going to teach you a new way of thinking and
Mhm.
of dealing with issues. It's all causal level. We don't diagnose or treat anything specifically. Tony, we basically treat everything non-specifically.
Mhm.
And so it's a pathway, and for people on a journey of helping others that want to up level their game, plain and
Cool.
simple. Yes, it's all the lab work, and it's as it applies to natural therapies only, completely 100% drug free. We're accredited by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners, because that's not our backyard. We're the other
Mhm.
backyard. So, and it isn't, there's no problem with the two backyards being there. People should go to the one they need, and they might need both. And hopefully they don't need the medical one for very long. You get out of the woods, and now you're in our backyard, because we're the ones that are in longevity and into aging and vitality, and, you know, good sleep, clear thinking, lots of energy, good muscle tone, and again, vitality is kind of an operative word there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate again what you're trying to achieve. Give people a tool to help them help themselves, and to help clinicians who are helping people to give them a different path, because no clinician wants to have people in front of them and they can't help them the way they had always dreamed when they became a clinician. And unfortunately, as you have suggested, our conventional medicine is absolutely wonderful for certain types of situations. For if I get an infection, I need an antibiotic. If I break my arm, I need an orthopedic doctor to fix that. You know, but what can I do so that if I fall, the chances of my arm breaking is less, because I have a solid bone, and it's not a fragile bone. It's covered with. I don't have sarcopenia, which is my muscles shrunken away because I didn't know how to feed that muscle the right
Yeah.
amino acids. So I just think we need both, and that's why I guess integrative medicine, showed up so that we can integrate, and but we need to be as respectful of a holistic approach as the rest of the world is. America may be an outlier in that we don't benefit to the extent we should. And we use most of the medicines of the world in one country, which is something to ponder, that's a true statement. And we subsidize the medicines that probably shouldn't be all over the world as well. So it's a whole lot of no statements. But let's pause and let's think about you as a person. I know you've been working on your health and others for quite some time. But as you think about the next 12 months, of your life, how do you plan to protect your nest? Now, my nest is all about nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep. Our thoughts, protecting those, and obviously recovering from trauma if you need to recover from trauma. The rope is all about having healthy relationships, avoiding organisms and pollutants that can harm us. And the E is protecting our emotions and making sure our life experiences serve us. And I always tease my guests and say, my life experience with you serves me and the people that follow this podcast. So what's your thoughts? What over the next 12 months, are there areas that you're really wanting to give additional attention?
On a personal level, yeah, um, I want to spend more time with my wife and do some things that we enjoy, more hiking and kayaking. We talked the other day about because we live on a darn lake. If I showed you a
Mm,
picture, you'd go, "Come on, I know you own a boat, Reed."
right.
And we don't even have a kayak, So we're gonna get a kayak and we're gonna go kayaking and stuff like that. We'll probably go to church a little bit more. We do get up and pray every day and be thankful, and that sets the tone for us for the most part, and we always fall back to that too, to being thankful and glad, and then you build on that. Your all your other activities, what you eat. You don't want to. Your body's a temple. You're going to put poison in it, or invite that in. No, and it's the same thing with your brain, inviting in poison, toxic
Mhm.
thoughts and arguments and things like that. I don't argue with my wife. You know what? Because I don't give her anyone to argue with, or
Right.
anybody. Hey, I just discuss and talk. I never raise my voice. I just, you got to give them. I mean, look, you could fall into it. That'd be easy to
Mhm.
argue with. Boy, I could probably win a few of them.
Right.
Then what do you really win? So it starts with, don't give them anyone to argue with. You discuss everything, and you listen, and you exchange. You have to be brave, and state your point. But so I use things like that. And if you ask me on a personal level, I'm going to kayak, hike. I'm going to spend more time with my wife doing meaningful things
Mhm.
that builds our relationship at a deeper level.
I love it. I've made I actually canceled Memorial Day for my week myself this past because we're recording this maybe I think the week after that, and I it's actually maybe 2 weeks, but this is the thing. Um, why did I cancel the holiday? And I had to tell my mom and my wife I'm just
Mm.
gonna go home and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I'm gonna really focus on getting this work done. But if you sacrifice that for me, and let me do that, then I'm gonna try to be a doctor who can actually be present at home and not sit in front of a computer the entire evening, which is what has happened historically, not just for Dr. Hampton, but for many of my colleagues, which is why burnout is so high. And so I did that, and literally for the first time in years that I can recall, I didn't turn on this computer. We use a medical record called Epic, and I'd come home and I wouldn't turn on the computer. And then I would, that next morning I would spend about an hour and 15 minutes cleaning up what occurred the previous evening and night. And then, but that's the goal because this past weekend, we grabbed her dad who has dementia and we went to our local park near the library and they had a outing and we were out, dancing and having a good time as a family. And the old version of me would have been, oh, I got to get back so I can get to the work, right? And after we did that, my next question was, what we're going to do next? So I just feel so when you talked about what you're trying to do with your significant other, that lady of your, life, I'm thinking the same way. And you don't have to have gray hair. You have more than me, but you don't have to have gray hair on your face to make these kind of choices. We
Yeah.
need to appreciate and enjoy every single day. And that's another way to heal is to make sure that you're living your best life every single day and appreciating the people in your life. So I appreciate all of that. And I guess as we wrap up, just share the best way for people to find the resources that you have. I'm sure I'm going to have a link in the notes, but just want to say that out loud.
Well, thank you for all of that, for sharing and acknowledgement and stuff, because that's where we got to go. Sometimes you just can't work all the time. And, there's not going to be anyone on their deathbed said, I wish I'd have worked more.
Right.
Not one person, like, ever.
No.
Yeah, so you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor too. You can't take it with you, and so family pretty much is number one always,
Yeah.
and your relationship. So um, what I do is called functional diagnostic nutrition. It's just a word. It's just a phrase I came up with. I was doing it for 10 years before I had to name it. And when I put my very first class together, someone said, "What are you going to call it?" Like, I don't know. Functional. It's functional. It's diagnostic in nature, even though we're not doing medical diagnosis. And it's about nurturing and nutrition
Right.
and
Yeah.
nurturing. So it just came out. So FDN You could type in FDN, go to GPT chat and ask them what's FDN, functional diagnostic. They'll tell you. It's in there.
Mhm.
We're kind of in the books as a way of thinking and handling our bodies and minds and lives and so it's fdntraining.com is the easiest way. Functional diagnostic nutrition.com, it's the same site. FDN training, just a little easier to remember. And
Mhm.
you could put something in your show notes, depending on when you're airing this, that lets them know that we found through you, Tony. That would be appropriate and really good.
Okay.
And we'll give you a URL or something. But
Okay.
yeah, so we just want people to start taking more control and responsibility. Realize that you should be in control of your health, not anyone else, not me, and not the next practitioner either. There's no gurus. I'm not a guru. This is what I tell my fellow practitioners. I'm not a guru, and neither are you.
Mhm. That's right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, I don't know anyone at the top of the mountain that's in perfect health. Tony, do
Yeah.
you know anyone who's perfectly healthy, or are we all just working on it?
We're all working on it, and we'll continue to. And then if you don't struggle along the way, something's wrong. Like, it's normal to struggle. It's normal to try
Yeah,
to figure things out. But being a human organism, it's just there's going to be things that come up. Yeah. So I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Okay, man.
Excellent. Well, you the
Fantastic.
man. I appreciate you. I'm going to say a few wrap up comments, but I do want to just let you know I appreciate you, and I'll actually start my comment by saying that we started with that Jefferson Memorial story, right?
Yeah.
About the poo
Poop.
on the poo. So I think if you're a person checking this episode out, rather you're thinking about your work, your business, your career, rather you're thinking about your family or your health, it's important that you be comfortable with asking that why question many times. And in fact, it's called the 5 whys technique. So you name your problem that you're having, and then you ask yourself, why do you think it's happening? And you'll come up with an answer. It's a good chance the first answer is not the right answer. And then you have to ask, well, why is that happening? Just like the example with the flies and the birds and the spiders, and then you keep asking, and it's very likely if you've asked that question 4, 5, 6 times, you'll get to the root cause. And so by asking why you're sick, and that's what's cool about Reed and his resources, the labs help answer some of those questions. And the lab result you get may not be the actual root cause, but it'll then lead to the root cause. And I think there's so many hidden truths out there that we never discover because we make assumptions about what we initially think. So I hope this message resonates, that there are additional ways to help you heal. There are different additional tools out there to help you heal, and I want to make sure that you're aware. And that's why each and every week, as this podcast is delivering you content, we're going to think broadly. We're going to think about all the elements of the nest and rope, and we're going to use that as the foundation to help us heal. So for those who are checking us out, if you enjoyed this episode, of course, like, share, and maybe comment. And we're going to continue delivering great content every week. And so until we do it again, I will conclude by saying I want you to continue to be safe, to be well, and continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.